3 days, the doctor whispered, and the world shattered around Mr. Harrington. His only daughter, Lily, the one he had built empires for, the reason he woke up every morning, was dying. No treatment worked, no specialist could promise hope, and for the first time in his life, his wealth meant absolutely nothing. Machines hummed softly in the sterile hospital room, and Lily's tiny frame looked even smaller beneath the white sheets. She tried to smile through the oxygen mask when her father walked in, but her eyes told a truth her lips couldn't. She was slipping away. Outside the hospital gates, life moved on. Vendors shouted, cars honked, and among the chaos stood a boy no older than 12, barefoot and covered in dust. His name was Aiden. He had no family, no home, and nothing to his name except a worn-out photo of a little girl, his sister. She had died 2 winters ago, coughing herself to sleep in an alley because they couldn't afford medicine. Aiden had promised himself he'd never let anyone else suffer like she did, but promises are hard to keep when you have empty pockets and an emptier stomach. That afternoon, Aiden stood near the hospital gate, hoping to earn a few coins cleaning windshields. The guards usually chased him away, but hunger had made him brave. As he waited, he overheard 2 nurses speaking hurriedly. "The Harrington girl's condition is critical," one said. "She needs a transfusion immediately, but her blood type is AB negative, almost impossible to find." The other sighed. "They're testing every donor on file. No match yet." Aiden's heart skipped. AB negative. That was his blood type. He remembered because the shelter nurse had once told him it was rare, like a hidden key, she'd said. Without thinking, he ran toward the hospital doors, dodging the guards. They shouted at him, but he kept running until he reached the reception desk, panting and clutching his chest. "I heard the girl needs blood," he said between breaths. "I can give it. I'm AB negative." The nurse looked up, startled. "You're a child," she said softly. "And malnourished. You'll lose too much." Aiden smiled, though his lips trembled. "Please," he whispered. "Let me try. She deserves a chance. Someone should get the tomorrow I never had." The doctor was hesitant, but after confirming his blood type, they prepared the transfusion. Aiden's hands shook slightly as they inserted the needle. The nurse tried to distract him, asking about his family, but he only looked toward the window. "She looked like my sister," he said quietly. "Same smile. Same eyes that don't give up." His voice faded as the room blurred around him. He felt lightheaded but calm, almost peaceful, as though his sister was there, holding his hand. Meanwhile, Mr. Harrington paced outside the emergency ward, his expensive shoes echoing down the hallway. His assistant tried to speak, but he couldn't hear anything over the roar of his own guilt. For years, he had believed money could buy happiness, protection, and even time. But in that moment, watching strangers rush in and out of his daughter's room, he realized how wrong he'd been. The empire he had built couldn't save the only person who mattered. Hours passed before the doctor emerged, his expression unreadable. Mr. Harrington braced himself for the worst, but the doctor smiled faintly. "She's stable," he said. "We found a donor." "It's a miracle, sir." Mr. Harrington's legs nearly gave out as relief washed over him. "Who was it?" he asked. The doctor hesitated. "A boy," he said finally. "A street child." He insisted on helping. Mr. Harrington rushed to thank him, but by the time he reached the donor ward, the bed was empty. The nurse said the boy had left quietly after the transfusion, refusing food, payment, or even a place to stay. "He just smiled," she said softly, "and asked us to tell Lily to live enough for both of them." Outside, the city had fallen into twilight. Aiden sat on the hospital steps, weak but smiling as the first stars appeared. He clutched the old photo of his sister and whispered, "I kept my promise, Emma. Someone will wake up tomorrow because of us." His eyelids grew heavy, his body frail from the blood loss, but his heart was full. He looked up at the hospital windows one last time before slipping into the quiet comfort of the night. Inside, Lily stirred. The beeping of the monitors steadied, her breathing grew stronger, and a faint color returned to her cheeks. When she opened her eyes, she saw her father crying beside her bed. "You're safe, my love," he whispered through tears. "Someone gave you life." She tried to speak, her voice soft. "Who?" But he didn't answer. He only held her hand tighter, unable to explain the weight of a stranger's sacrifice. Later that evening, a nurse handed Mr. Harrington a folded note the boy had left behind. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear: "Tell her to smile every day. The world needs more light. I'm happy I could help." Mr. Harrington read the note over and over, tears dripping onto the paper. He went outside, searching the streets, calling the boy's name, but there was no sign of him. Only a pair of small, worn-out shoes lay by the gate. He knelt down, lifting them gently, and something inside him broke. For the first time in his life, the man who had everything realized he had nothing, no kindness, no purpose, no soul, until a child with nothing gave him everything. That night, as the city slept, Mr. Harrington walked barefoot through the streets, the shoes pressed to his heart. The empire could wait. The business calls could wait. From now on, he would live differently. He founded a children's shelter in Aiden's name, where no child would go hungry or die alone again. Every year on the same day, Lily visited that shelter with flowers and laughter, telling the story of the boy who gave her a tomorrow. She never forgot his name, and neither did her father. For them, Aiden wasn't just the boy who saved a life, he was the boy who taught them what life truly meant. When Lily opened her eyes, the world seemed distant, like a dream she wasn't sure she'd escaped. The bright light stung her vision, and for a moment, she couldn't tell if she was still somewhere between life and death. Then she heard it, the soft sound of someone crying. When her sight cleared, she saw her father sitting by her bedside, his face buried in his hands. The man who had always been untouchable, the man newspapers called the unshakable Titan, was trembling like a child. "You're safe, my love," he whispered, his voice breaking as he took her hand. "Someone gave you life." Lily blinked in confusion, her dry lips parting to speak. "Who?" she asked weakly. But her father couldn't answer. He only pressed her hand to his heart and looked away, his tears falling silently. By the window sat a small folded note on the table, resting beside a pair of blood-stained bandages. The nurse had placed it there after cleaning the room. Mr. Harrington picked it up with shaking fingers and unfolded it carefully, afraid the fragile paper might tear. The handwriting was uneven, almost childlike, but the words hit harder than any speech he had ever heard: "Tell her to live enough for both of us." For a long time, he couldn't move. The world went quiet, the hospital sounds fading away as those words echoed in his head. The note was signed with a single name, Aiden. That night, while Lily slept peacefully for the first time in months, Mr. Harrington stepped out of the hospital. The city lights flickered in the distance, but he barely noticed them. His mind was haunted by the boy's name, the small handwriting, and the thought that someone he'd never met had given up everything for his daughter. The guards at the gate nodded respectfully as he passed, but one of them hesitated, then spoke softly. "Sir, there was a boy here earlier, a thin one, looked sick. He left just before sunset. Said he didn't need anything, just wanted to see the stars." Something inside Mr. Harrington cracked. He followed the guard's direction toward the quiet side of the hospital, where the lampposts flickered weakly and the smell of rain lingered in the air. There, by the iron gate, he found them, a pair of worn-out shoes, small, dusty, and damp from the evening drizzle. He picked them up gently, as if afraid to disturb their memory. They were old, torn at the edges, the kind of shoes a child might wear for years because he couldn't afford another pair. Mr. Harrington sank to his knees, pressing them to his chest. For the first time in his life, the man who owned everything understood what it meant to have nothing. He stayed there for a long time, long after the city had gone quiet, long after the stars had faded behind the clouds. Every image of his life flashed before him, the mansions, the meetings, the trophies of success. None of it mattered now. He had built a world so focused on profit that he had forgotten people. He had lived for power, not love. And now, a boy who had no name, no home, no family, had reminded him what it meant to be human. The next morning, he visited the hospital records department, begging for information about the donor. But there was almost nothing, just a first name, a blood type, and a signature. Aiden had refused to give an address or contact number. He said he didn't have one, the nurse explained softly. He looked tired, but he smiled the whole time. Mr. Harrington listened in silence, clutching the note in his hand. "Did he make it?" he finally asked. The nurse lowered her gaze. "He left before we could check his vitals," she said quietly. "We think he collapsed somewhere nearby, but no one's found him." The weight of her words felt heavier than any business loss he had ever endured. He stepped outside and looked up at the morning sky, still gray with the last hint of dawn. Somewhere out there, a boy had given everything he had, his blood, his strength, maybe even his life, for a girl he didn't know. It wasn't charity. It wasn't duty. It was love, pure, selfless love, the kind of love Mr. Harrington had forgotten existed. Days later, when Lily grew strong enough to sit up, her father sat beside her, holding her hand. She had color in her cheeks again, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "You keep looking outside the window," she said with a faint smile. "Who are you waiting for?" He hesitated before answering. "Someone who showed me what it means to be alive," he said quietly. She tilted her head, confused. "The one who gave me life?" He nodded. "Yes. His name was Aiden." She smiled softly. "Then I'll live enough for both of us." From that day forward, nothing in the Harrington household was the same. The luxury cars still sat in the driveway, the skyscrapers still bore his name, but Mr. Harrington's priorities shifted completely. He sold off one of his estates and used the money to build a small home for abandoned children. He named it the Aiden House. No press release, no grand ceremony, just a promise, written quietly on the front gate: "No child will go unseen." Every week, Lily visited the shelter with flowers, books, and a smile that made the children laugh. She told them stories about a boy named Aiden, a hero with no cape, no riches, and no reward, just a heart big enough to save a life. She kept his note framed above her bed. Every time she felt tired or lost, she'd read those words again: "Live enough for both of us." It reminded her that every sunrise was borrowed from a miracle. Years passed, and Mr. Harrington grew older, but he never forgot the boy who changed everything. Whenever he passed the hospital, he'd stop by the gate where those small shoes had once been. He'd close his eyes, whisper a quiet thank you, and feel a peace that money could never buy. Because in that boy's sacrifice, he had found redemption. The richest man alive had once been poor in love, blind to kindness, and deaf to the quiet cries of the world around him. But because of a street kid who had nothing, he had learned that wealth means nothing if your heart is empty. And in giving his daughter a tomorrow, Aiden had given Mr. Harrington something even greater: the chance to finally be human.